Alright, let's add some projectiles. Gonna shoot some cubes with some smaller cubes. That sounds like a fun thing to do. Alright, so this is gonna be pretty similar to what I did for monsters and players and all of that. They're just gonna be more scene nodes. So let's create a class like it did before. And then let's see here. Let me look and see what I did for monster. Should be able to mostly just copy that. Part of the reason why I'm keeping all of these separate is just so I don't have to do a bunch of branching when I loop over them. I know that the same logic is going to apply to everything in that particular vector. I'm hoping I get some efficiency gains out of it, but I'm going to have to benchmark it. And actually, these projectiles might help us do that. Alright, so didn't have anything in CPP for monsters. It should be enough for projectiles. Alright, gotta add this guy to layer now. Alright, so now I gotta go through and do all of this stuff that I've been doing for all the other types. So I'm just gonna make a copy of that variable so I can just paste it in. Okay. And part of the reason why I'm adding projectiles, even though this is like a fantasy setting, is I was thinking about things like arrows and fireballs and all that kind of thing. I was actually tempted to just go with a hit scan, basically wherever the mouse is pointed, and I just decide whether it hits or not in a sort of instantaneous fashion. And that would maybe work for certain abilities, like maybe like some sort of like sorcerer type character doing like an arcane blast, but not so much for like arrows and fireballs like I mentioned before. Arrows pretty quick, so I could almost maybe get away with it there as long as they weren't too far away from the target, but I wouldn't expect the fireball to be that fast. So rather than do it that way, I'm just going to have projectiles for those, and then when they collide, it'll have some sort of action that takes place. I don't plan to implement that piece tonight, but that's the direction I want to go with these projectiles. Right now, I just want to get to a spot where I can generate a projectile in the direction that I'm looking with some amount of velocity so that it just keeps going. And that's part of the reason why I have to go through and update all these spots. Because I need to sort of interpolate or guess the location based on the velocity for the projectile too, because that's what's going to move it across the screen, is that velocity. Okay. Kind of thinking it would be nice to clean up some of this with meta classes if that ever makes its way into the C++ standard. Just write some code to generate some code. Because a lot of this is basically the same. However, I don't know how that would play with other features in the compiler, like the auto vectorization. I don't know if it would pick up the hints. By that token, though, I have yet to test that as it is, so I don't know if that's actually generating vector instructions, like SIMD instructions, or if it's just running these one at a time. Oh, missed one. There we go. And some of you may have noticed if you're looking really closely that I've got this extent in here. Basically between the position and the extent, I'm more or less creating a bounding box. I plan to use that for the collisions later when I get that far, but none of that's implemented yet. All right, so I think that gives me everything from an animation perspective. Okay, now I need to go to my scene manager and make sure that these are included in the rendering. Let's just double check my work down here. All right, that looks good. All right, so now we need something to actually put them in the world. So I think for testing purposes, I'm just going to pick a key and bind to it. Looks like I was using in before, so I will just add on to that. That makes sense to me. Put a to do in there, but I don't think I need that anymore. All right. So should have access to game state and layers. And I can't remember if I stored the port in here or not. Yep, there we go. Okay. And then projectiles and to add. Let's just call this well, I'll just call it projectile. That makes sense to me. For the time being, let's just make a static int. Let's say last ID 0, and then ID will be equal to this plus plus. I don't remember what type I gave to that, so let me double check that real quick. Let's see. C node. All right, unit. All right, so we're gonna add that. And then most of the rest of this can be the same. However, I do want the position and direction. So that should be effects. Okay. Oops, forgot my space there. And that's going to be equal to there we go, man. Completes almost back. Well, that refactor didn't do what I wanted at all. All right, let's. I'll worry about cleaning that up later. All right, position and game state. Position and I believe what I actually want is the front that's used by the camera. So let me double check that. In front, and it's public. I believe that's what I want. So instead, all right, now I'm kind of curious if I can. No, it's not gonna let me do that. Well, that's fine. Does not like camera. I do not remember where I refactored camera to. Okay, it's under Animation Manager. That actually makes sense. Alright, so animation manager dot camera dot front. I may want to do something slightly different though, because I believe that's before the time is applied. Do I stash move speed anywhere? I do not. Alright, for now I'm just going to grab this translation speed. And then if I need to speed it up, I can always do that. Okay. We got an ID, position, direction. The model in the frame will default to 0. That is fine. For context, by default to 0, I'm talking about the fact that because my struct here doesn't have either of those properties, my fancy template magic is going to realize that they aren't there and insert 0. This is on the N key, so let's build this and make sure I didn't make any syntax errors anywhere. Got some parts coming this week, hopefully, so I can fix my full tower. Pretty excited about that. Should help my build times quite a bit. All right. Another thing to note is I haven't added projectiles to the server, so it doesn't know anything about them. That's why I didn't update the network layer to inform the server, because it doesn't know what to do with them. So, all right. So there's my monster. If I hit N, that does not appear to have done anything at all. Oh. Okay. So it is doing something, but the velocity is such that it's basically flying out. Alright, I'm going to take this translation speed multiplier out. Translation speed is just a 2x, so I may actually have to decrease the speed further. so there's that. The other problem is it does not appear to be spawning where I think it should be spawning. Alright, well, one problem at a time. Let's take a look at this. How this front is calculated, which that's what I use for movement, so I believe that should be correct. Alright, well, let's slow this down first so I can do a little bit of diagnosis. We'll say a tenth of the speed. And then while I'm at it, let me look in animation. Okay, so direction and position. So plus equal, I believe that's basically what I'm doing over here. All right. So should be pointing the direction that I'm looking. Yeah, updates every frame essentially. I think I need the opposite. So let me take a look here. So if I take, well, the position's problematic as well. Let's make this negative 0.1. Interesting. So they're going almost the direction that I want them to. However, that one was above. Okay. All right. Still curious why it's not the position that I think it's supposed to be. Oh. Okay. I have to think about this. Because the position's not actually the position. Because it's from my perspective. So I think what I actually want this to be is origin. That would make sense. So although I do need to know the actual position though. So that's something I need to figure out. Okay. Still only showing up in that one location. That is very curious. Yeah, I don't see anything that's standing out to me. Alright, let's take a look. Maybe something's changing the value elsewhere. Just give it some ridiculous value and we'll roll with that and see what it does. Sure is taking a while for the server to show me my cube. Alright. Curious. So that value is definitely sticking. Alright, so one thing I can do is on the server side temporarily turn off that hard-coded monster so there's no confusion about the origin. Let's change this guy back. Okay. So there's no monster on the map. Ah, okay. I think I see what the issue is. So it's starting basically at my character's feet. Okay, I can work with this. So I can set that initially, but then let's modify the Y. put an extent or not. I did not. Okay, let me get some logic to grab the extent. I'll just grab it for the cube model for now. Access to model manager. Who did I make own model manager? Animation manager. That makes sense. Okay, so I think that's the wrong direction. Oh, also I don't know that I want it the full extent, but I can tweak that later. I might have to do something a little bit more sophisticated because I essentially want to figure out where, like, the center of the screen is in 3D space. I'll have to think about that one. This is pretty darn close. This actually might be fine the way it is. So I think I'm actually looking from the top edge of the cube. So this is probably roughly correct. All right, so let's do a few more tweaks here. I think let's go with 25 speed, and then let's set scale equal to, we'll make those 1/10 size cubes. Oh, got an error here. Oh, okay. Yep, my mistake. Scale is also a vec. That's right. There we go. It's kind of nice. Even with these semi-dynamic parameters, I'm still getting type validation out of it, so that is pretty nice. I may have to reconsider the scale thing though. Right now, I can scale it any direction. It doesn't have to be like the same scaling in on every axis. That's good flexibility to have though, so I'll probably leave it. All right. I feel like a fireball would still be faster than that. So let's go for... Oh, that's not what I wanted to change at all. Nope, that is what I wanted to change. All right, let's go for that. Let's make the... I'll make it 30% size and half speed. I think in game, once it's ready, rate of fire would be limited by your character's stamina. So honestly, isn't too bad though. Alright, before we call it, I am now curious. What kind of frames we're getting. So let's fire up our old friend RenderDoc. And I'm actually going to launch the release client. Hopefully we won't get any huge dips. Alright, holding pretty good at 60 FPS. Now, keeping in mind, I think we're hitting some culling. I think it's going outside of range and basically giving up rendering them, but I don't have any logic to remove these right now, so. Yeah, lock solid at 60 FPS. I'll take it. Alright, well, let's put the monster spawn back in. And I think we can call that successful right there. I think there's still some tweaks that need to be made with the position needs to be tweaked a little bit. And obviously, the projectile spawns should be tied to um, like a skill, as opposed to just having a random button that just spawns projectiles into the world. But I think that's good for one session. So see ya.